No, no.
How many times have you seen people swiveling through this hip 90-90 stretch and claiming that it's the best way to gain hip mobility? Guys, I'll tell you, this is a decent way to maintain the mobility you already have. It's not a great way to gain hip mobility for most people because in order to do so, you've got to apply a ton of stress at the knee joint in order to use that as a lever to improve hip mobility. I'm not a big fan of sacrificing the knee joint to improve the hip joint. It's not going to play out functionally very well. I would much rather we put a lot of stress into the hip joint through different planes of motion that don't stress our other joints. One of the methods I really like to use when improving hip mobility is sagittal plane motions of hip flexion and hip extension. If I keep my tibia oriented parallel with my body, as I really push through hip extension, I'm not just gaining hip extension. Remember, this ball and socket joint doesn't work sometimes the way we think it does arthrokinematically. If I improve hip extension, I'm also improving hip internal rotation at the same time because it's a joint capsule. If I really improve one direction, other associated directions will open up at the same time. And then I need to use it in order to really own that new mobility. But this is at least a plane of motion that I can put a ton of stress into the hip joint safely without negatively affecting any of my other joints. So now let's run through 3 techniques you can actually use to improve your hip mobility safely. The high elevated lunge stretch. So we want to put one foot up on a box or a surface height that is above knee level. Both feet should be oriented straight forward to make sure that we're not getting any accessory hip motions in there. The front leg is getting max range of motion, hip and knee flexion, while the back leg is getting max range of motion, hip extension. The next one is a kneeling lunge stretch. So kind of the same thing here in terms of the position, but we just do this if you don't have a high elevated surface. Some people can't get on their knees, but if you can, this is a great option. Again, that back leg is getting drug into max range of motion, hip extension, as long as we're making sure the tibia stays in line with the femur. This one I really like. Again, for anybody can do this. You just get a PVC pipe or a dowel rod out in front of you. That back leg could be on a bench. This can be below knee height. As that front leg lunges out, the back range of motion goes into hip extension. Try to contract the glute on the back leg to really drive true hip extension.